All right, let's turn to a segment now that Rick, you actually sort of came up with, perhaps accidentally. Just good football players is what you like to call these guys. And I think it's not a backhanded compliment. It's a way to appreciate guys who aren't going to run 4.3s and who aren't going to jump 45 inches and who aren't physical specimens necessarily, but they're guys you want on your football team. And, you know, we talked about Jordan Battle in the sense that he's not going to be the best athlete, but he's an incredibly smart football player and he helps your football team. You have some guys that you've identified in our first edition here of JGF. I'm making that part up there. Who do you want to go with here?
Are we going to get T-shirts made up with that?
Yes. Right after we get our
I would just like a podcast T-shirt. I'm going like no sponsorship today, just a plain black T-shirt.
Yeah, the wheels are slow when it comes to merch here. We'll get on that though, Rick.
Yeah, my three guys that I wanted to kind of point out, and the first time, you know, we talked a little bit about this last week, but John Michael Schmitz, the offensive center from Minnesota, and when I watched him on tape, he is just such a mature, savvy vet type player. And he's big, he's physical, he's very good in pass protection. He can fit in any scheme. He doesn't get a lot of love out there because he's an offensive lineman. But if I had to make a comparison to who I thought he reminded me of when I watched him on tape, it was Travis Fredericks when Dallas drafted him at the end of the first round. I thought they had very similar skill sets when he came out of Wisconsin to what I seen Michael Schmidt do at the University of Minnesota. And he played very well in his bowl game. He wasn't an opt-out guy.
Which bumps him up a full round grade.
I like full round, well. Yeah. He's top 10 now.
I liked him as a day 2 guy. Where are you at on that? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, no, I think he's a Friday guy. I think depending on the depth of the first round and all those guys that can rush the passer are going to go, you know, guys that can catch the ball. It'd be interesting, you know, in those conversations when you're developing your draft board and you're getting into that lower first round, top of the second round. And I'm going to kind of propose this to you. If you have a running back there, which is devalued versus, you know, a guy like Michael Schmitz, who I think is a heck of a football player that can anchor your offensive line. Do you take a swing towards that offensive lineman and wait for the running backs in this draft? Or do you take a Gibbs, potentially if both of those are sitting there with your pick?
I like that. So I'll switch the tables again. I feel like this is
can you answer a question? I mean, I can ask questions too. I can't be all the answer.
You're exactly right. Yeah. So when you were saying that, here's what I was thinking. I was thinking if Rashawn Johnson is there and John Michael Schmitz there, I might lean Rashawn Johnson, our guy from Texas, the running back, who has, as you pointed out, low mileage. He'll probably be a day 2 guy. He played behind Bijan Robinson, but he does some things well, special teams value. And I feel like there's some other centers in this class that I like that may still be available after John Michael Schmitz goes off the board. But I don't know if there's a ton of Rashawn Johnsons out there. What do you think about
that? I think there's a ton of good running backs coming out because you can get value on running backs as you go through second round, third round, fourth round. I mean, Pierce, you know, who's playing very well down in Houston, wasn't a top first round pick. The kid from Florida playing with the Commanders right now is playing at a high level. He wasn't a top round pick. So you can find some of these running backs, although I do love Johnson, the running back, the low mileage kid from Texas. And we talked about him in our last podcast too. But it's hard to find offensive linemen. It's hard to find centers that probably can play guard as well.
Yeah.
But the intelligence, the savvy, the veteran maturity that he seems to play with week in and week out in the Big Ten against some very good defensive linemen, I don't know if you can pass that by. But you also have to look and see, okay, if we don't take a swing at him here, let's say in the second round, we go with your scenario, I'm going to take the running back here. And you need a center guard combination that should, and I think this kid can come in and start his rookie year. But there's not a lot of center guard combinations that you're in love with after him. Then you better take the guy that you love.
No, that's right. You talked me into it. That's why you're you and I'm me. Fair enough. All right. No, I like John Michael Schmitz. I had him as a day 2 guy. Deion Henry out of Washington State is a fun young man to watch play football.
Very good football player. One of the funnest tape evaluations that I did this fall. He's very athletic. There's no question that he can play on 3 downs. He has a nose for the football. He attacks everything down here, shoots gaps, makes plays, can be over aggressive at times and take himself out of plays. But I love this kid's athleticism. I love his instincts. I love the intensity that he plays with. And I know when I'm grading linebackers, you put him as 3-down linebackers or 2-down linebackers, and the 3-down linebackers have a lot more value because this kid, I think, can play in nickel situations as well. And he reminded me a little bit of someone who wasn't talked about a lot, but I thought was a very good football player when he came out of Ohio State. A little bit of like a Pete Warner type. Was productive, made a lot of plays, not a lot of pub behind his name. But, I think he's been having a great career down in New Orleans, although I know he's banged up a little bit this year.
Yeah, Henley. I called him Henry. His last name's Henley. And Dayon, the kid we're talking about from Washington State, I'm looking at my notes here. If defensive linemen keep him clean, he will shoot gaps and blow up plays all day long. That seems like a positive. He's not looking to run around blocks. And let me ask you about that just in general. When you see off-ball linebackers do 230-ish, 235-ish, and they're running around blocks, that has to be a concern for you. But is that something you can work around, or is the athleticism coming into play?
All these linebackers running on blocks at the college level. None of them know really how to use their hands to take on blocks at the point, except some of the two-gap type guys. And we haven't talked about Sewell from Oregon yet, but I wasn't probably his biggest fan as the media is making him out to be, because I think he's a 2-down linebacker and he's a heavy-handed kid. But this kid also, because of his athleticism, I thought he had an effect on a quarterback when they did blitz him. So I think he can affect the game in a lot of different ways, not only with his speed and his sideline to sideline range, but with his athleticism and coverage, his athleticism when they do run him on blitzes to affect the quarterback and disrupt the quarterback's rhythm. So I think this kid is going to be one of those names that you hear. And I think it'll be fun to watch him down at the Senior Bowl, because I believe he is going down to the Senior Bowl. So I can't wait for the Senior Bowl this year, because a lot of these kids we're talking about that may not be well-recognized names are going to make a name for themselves down at the Senior Bowl. I think this will be one of those kids.
I thought you were going to say you couldn't wait for the Senior Bowl because it'll be your first year with me at the Senior Bowl. So that could be also.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I can't sleep at night. I'm so excited to get out there.
Oh, yeah. So that'll be something to look forward to for sure. So I had him as a late day 2, early day 3 guy, only because he's a little older. Now, if he were 22, I'd probably be like a day 2 guy. Is there any concern about the age? He's a 6-year senior.
Is he under 25?
I didn't have his birthday. I only got the 6-year senior part, so I don't have that yet. I'm guessing he is.
Okay. Our age alert was when they turned 25 years old in their rookie year. So if he's under 25, it wouldn't be a concern.
Okay.
If he was 25, then that is definitely a little bit of a concern.
But I'm with you. I love the football player, and I'm looking forward to seeing him as well. All right. Your last guy is edge rusher Thomas Incoom out of Central Michigan, 6'2", 261-ish. And he's a grown man.
Yeah, I'm kind of anxious to see how tall he is.
Okay.
But I don't know if he's 6'1" or if he's 6'4". I've looked at all kind of different estimates out there. We'll find out here in a couple of weeks. But this is a guy that loves to play the game. The way his first step quickness is off the snap. First game I put on was against Oklahoma State, and he had 1 or 2 sacks that game. He chased down the quarterback. He was disruptive in the run game. This guy made plays all over the field. And then I was like, oh, God, let me watch him against Penn State, because your guy that went back that was a top 5 pick, and this kid had some pretty good snaps against. It was a heck of a battle. And, Ola had his hands full in this game. But I love this kid's motor. I love this kid's energy. And I love this kid's first step quickness, because he has a unique ability to get a jump on a snap and beat through and work through the edges of these offensive tackles. And I think he's going to be one of those kids that pop out down at the Senior Bowl as well.
And you can speak to this, Rick. I remember Scott Pioli telling me this last year at the Senior Bowl, that those one-on-one blocking drills, those favor the defense because you don't have a guard and a center to help you out if you're the tackle. It's just one-on-one, and if you get beat, it looks much worse than it will be in reality. But those things sort of leave impressions on you as you go through the process. And this feels like one of those situations where he could have success in those one-on-one drills. But I think you're exactly right. I don't know how tall he is either. I'm looking at my notes here. He plays like with a low center of gravity, so he's sort of hard to handle in that sense. If you're a big 6'5", 6'6" offensive tackle, and the things he was able to do, the way you were talking about it, if Anadike Uzama had those skills as a 5 tech, I feel like he would be almost a complete package because it feels like Incoon plays better. Not necessarily out wide, although he's lined up as a 7 before, but he plays better as a 4 or 5 technique.
I would agree a little bit, but I also think when they do line him up wide, because of his ability to bend and torque his body, he has a real natural feel. And again, that's why I'm anxious to see how long his arms are and how tall this kid is. But once he gains the edge or the outside shoulder of an offensive tackle, he has a great sense of where the quarterback is in the pocket. And the other thing is that he has a burst to finish. And once he gets through that edge, this guy can close on a quarterback regardless of who it is. And, he shows his speed. I mean, I saw in the Oklahoma State game, he's chasing down a quarterback halfway across the field and ran him down. So this kid will be fun to watch as we get down there.
All right, those are your 3 guys. Just good football players. They're not guys. They're just good football players.
Do you have any 3 guys that are just good football players?
They are. We'll see if they're as good as your guys. We'll have to match them up. This might be a part of the $1 bet. Who goes first among these 2? We get that running list, by the way. Debo's got that list going. So we'll see how that plays out as we get through this process here. My first guy is Kalijah Cansey, the defensive lineman out of Pitt. He's listed, and we'll find out. He's listed 6 feet even at 275. So he's a little light for an interior guy. Played a lot of 3 tech, did some 0 and 1 tech as well. Sometimes they kick him out wide at 5 tech, but not very often. My overall note was he has a lethal swim move at the snap, and when paired with his twitchiness, makes him almost impossible to stop through the A gap. But the question is, can he play at 275 at the next level? And that's more of a question for you than for me. But it's one of those guys where you don't have any expectations going in, and they keep flashing, and you're like, okay, this is fun. I don't know if he's listed at only 275, 280. He looks about like that on tape. He can sometimes try to get around blocks to make plays instead of taking on the offensive lineman was one of the issues. And if he doesn't win with twitch off the snap, he can struggle sometimes to get home if those bigger offensive linemen lock up on him. But the motor's there. He feels like a guy who absolutely loves playing football. And when you have that twitch and he's able to be so disruptive between the A gaps, that gets your attention. But I'll ask you just in general, 6'0", 275, what are you thinking about when you're talking about a 0 to 3 tech?
Yeah, this was a kid that I was actually very excited to go watch when Pitt came down and played Miami. And then I lost my excitement and enthusiasm when he didn't play because he was hurt.
I didn't know that.
So just note to self as you sit there and finalize this. But I did love the kid's energy that he plays with, but he has to be in the right scheme, and he'll probably be a situational type guy, maybe give you some inside pass rush because of his twitch. But if you think you're going to line this guy up inside and he's going to take on double teams, he's going to take on combo blocks, he's going to get mashed up at the NFL. So if you're drafting this kid, you better like small defensive linemen because it's a big man's game up there. And he's probably going to be a situational guy if he's anything at all. But I struggle with guys this size that you're going to say he's going to come in, he's going to play 60 snaps for you. He's not. And he better not be in a scheme that doesn't fit what he does best. And that's just getting up the field and try to disrupt and get penetration off the snap. Because if you're going to ask him to sit there and hold the point and keep the guard in the center or whatever combination blocks he's going to have to face, so the linebackers can make plays. He's the one that's going to end up blocking the linebackers because he's going to be knocked off 5 yards off the ball.
And that's an important thing to remember because I was very much enjoyed watching him play, but there has to be a fit for him. So even though the plays, the games that I watched, he was at times dominating. It's against college opponents. That doesn't necessarily translate when you're playing on the inside there. So what might look like day 2 talent might end up being day 3 reality because of the limitations that you've mentioned size-wise.
Correct. Yeah. And I would not that they played against them, but my good football player, I would put my money on Michael Schmidt if he had to sit here and block this
Right.
kid one-on-one all day.
Right. No, and that's a fair point. And it's always important not to think about these kids in a vacuum, but in terms of how they may actually look once they get on the field. All right.
That's
This
part
guy,
of scouting. Just
yeah.
Note to self.
Right. Just not the sort of the pie in the sky, what you think will happen. You might want to think about what's actually going to happen once they get on the field. Here's a guy that I know you're going to love, and I'm surprised he was on your list. This guy is a just good football player. Tommy Eichenburg, the linebacker out of Ohio State. I think you called him a throwback, and
Yep.
I feel like that's the highest compliment you can pay this young man. Again, he ain't going to run a 4.3 or 4.4. He's not like my guy Ryan Shazier coming out of Ohio State, who was a track star. It felt like different body type, everything. He will take on blocks, and he is a sideline to sideline guy because of his motor, not because of his speed. And he even, and I mentioned this to you when we talked earlier, coverage is going to be an issue, granted, but he was running. He got beat in the middle of the field in cover 2. I think he was playing the middle linebacker role, and he got beat down the seam there by a track star, one of the Georgia wide receivers. But he didn't get beat by 3 steps. He only got beat by half a step, which led me to believe that was better than I thought in terms of the athletic limitations. But Tommy Eichenburg is a guy who's going to come in and play special teams. He can play situationally. He's probably going to be like your 2-down guy that you were talking about, and probably a good locker room guy based on the way he works. He seems the rapport he has with his teammates and the way he carries himself on the field.
And probably he's going to be one making all the calls and adjustment because he's a smart football player too. And I agree. He is just a throwback football player. And I always kidded my brother too, because he couldn't run and he couldn't test well either. But there's no one that was going to beat him to the sideline because of his instincts and how quickly that he can react to what he's seeing that's happening in front of him. The only guy I've seen that ran past my brother, but he ran past a lot of guys, was Bo Jackson.
Whatever happened to him?
Chris said Bo knows that he's fast. Chris said that was the only guy that I could not get to the sideline before he turned the corner up the field. But this kid is just a throwback, good football player. You got to also understand, as much as you love watching him on tape, that you got to understand his limitations. You got to be able to project how is he going to match up versus the athletes. And, of course, when someone has a infatuation with a player like you have with this kid, the track star, he must have ran under 10-second 100 meters, according to you, because it's funny listening to all the scouts in the meetings. I could always tell when they loved the player and whoever they were going against, well, that guy has to be the fastest guy on Georgia football team, and he was only a half a step behind him. So
you've heard that before.
I do recognize that this kid's intelligence, this kid's instincts, and this kid's he's a very, very good football player. Just the athletic limitations and how he's going to be able to match up at the next level.
It warms my heart to know that you've heard these. Me trying to spin these tales. These aren't the first time you've heard this.
That antenna went right up as soon as you said sprinter, fastest guy ever to play at the University of Georgia. He was only a half a step behind him. Red flag.
If you love Eichenburg, you're gonna. I don't know what you're gonna think about my guy Sidney Brown, whose brother Chase Brown is the running back. Chase Brown is the running back in Illinois, who's gotten most of the pub. On that side of the ball, the defensive side of the ball, we've talked about Devin Witherspoon. We talked last week or 2 weeks ago, about the slot corner / safety that plays in the secondary, who's going to be the Senior Bowl that we're looking forward to seeing. And then also Sidney Brown, who plays closer to the line of scrimmage. The problem is he's listed at 5'10", 205, which means he might not be even that. And, you don't want your safeties to be 5'2". We don't want a bunch of Pete Priscos running out there, but he can play apex. He can play in the slot. He can play the deep half if you need him to, and plays in 1 high, 2 high looks. He's at his best closer to the line of scrimmage, which is what you've said previously. We talked about him. either as an apex defender or in the slot. And I get miniature Talanoa Hufanga vibes, the USC kid who was a day 3 guy, who is a missile. And I feel like Sidney Brown is willing to throw his body around on special teams and close to the line of scrimmage. He'll take on blocks, even if against offensive tackles on the edge, and he's willing to make plays. He can guard up, man up on some tight ends and coverage on short and intermediate routes. I like that about him. He can blitz off the edge. He's shown that capability to Illinois, and he just feels like a football guy who's going to be roster spot 42 to 53 that comes in and does the dirty work for you on Sundays.
Okay. I did like this kid as a football player. Here's some questions I have on him. Okay.
All right. What are they?
I thought they play, when you watch Illinois and their DBs, they're in man coverage almost every snap. So this kid was on the tight end a lot. And the one guy I wanted them to see match up was against the Iowa tight end, Laporte, who I think is a very good tight end. And he held his own, and that was a great battle. If you want to go back and watch the game tape on that, that was a fun battle to watch. This kid's tough. He's physical. He went out with a bang in the Northwestern game. He had a pick 6. He also picked up, I think, a 63-yard fumble return for a touchdown. So he scored twice on defense, which tells you what kind of football player he is. The biggest concern I have with him is, and which you don't see, is that when he has to play in the deep half of the field, does he have the range and athleticism to do it? I'm not questioning the type of football player he is on the field when he's close to the line of scrimmage, or as you referred to, I believe, Apex, and that's not the old athletic company, right? The Apex sweatsuits and things like that. You're talking about at the point of attack, I'm assuming.
Yeah, right.
But I do have concern because I didn't see it when he has to play in the deep half of the field or play out in space. What's that going to look like?
Right. No, that's fair. Absolutely. And that's why these are just good football players and not guaranteed top 5 picks. And that's sort of part of the process. We try to cover all the bases here. And I think it's the first good go at round 1 of just good football players